So today we are going to be focusing on red herrings. For those of you who I have not met before, my name is Hayley. I am the head of education at ProWritingAid, and my job is just to host events like this and really focus on how to get the most educational and exciting and fun content for all of you. So I'm so glad to have you here. If you haven't been to a write-in before, it's a little bit different than a traditional webinar. So on our traditional webinars, we do a lot of teaching and we do a lot of exercises and stuff like that. But for our write-in, there's less teaching and more actually doing. So I'm going to run through a few slides about what red herrings are and just a couple of best practices. But then we'll actually spend the bulk of the session just practicing writing red herrings and really writing and then sharing into the chat if we want to. So when it comes time to write, I will be starting timers that you can work on the prompts that I give for, and then we are able to share your work in the chat if you so choose, but you can also keep it to yourself. So make sure you have something nearby to write with, whether it's your computer, pen and paper, etc. Remember that when it comes to sharing, you are welcome to, but you also do not have to. And if you do want to share, excuse me, please share with hosts and attendees, or sorry, with everybody, actually, that's more accurate. So if you, on the to bar in the chat where it says to, there's a drop down where you can hit to share with everyone. So that way everyone can see your awesome writing. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. So today's write-in is focused all on red herrings. So what is a red herring? A red herring is basically a misleading or false clue. They are typically used in mysteries and thrillers to lead readers down a false path. Red herrings also typically lead the protagonist down a false path as well. So a red herring is a red herring because the protagonist is potentially interested in that suspect or that clue, but it's also something that's there for readers. That being said, while red herrings are very common in mysteries and thrillers, they are also used in other genres. So we'll talk today about how J.K. Rowling used a red herring in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Red herrings could even be used in like romance novels or something like that if you want to throw out a potential love interest that isn't the actual love interest. I don't know if anybody reads Sarah Maas, if you read young adult fantasy, but she kind of throws out like red herring love interests all the time, where the first love interest is typically the distraction and it's actually the one that comes later that's the real one. So while there are, traditional red herrings typically included in mysteries and thrillers, the kind of concept of something that can throw readers on a different or unexpected path is something that can happen for any genre. So if you're not writing mysteries or thrillers, don't worry, you can still kind of have something to think about today. So red herrings can be anything from a character who seems evil or suspicious. Again, that's typically in mysteries or thrillers. If you're going in a different direction, like you're writing a romance, the red herring could be somebody who seems like suspicious because they're too good to be true or something like that. Anything where the character that is kind of drawing that attention is drawing attention in a way that seems almost too obvious, right? It's to distract both the reader and the protagonist interacting with that red herring from their final objective, whether that's to solve the crime, to have love, whatever their ultimate objective is. So a red herring can be a character. It's very common for red herrings to be people within the story. A red herring can also be an object. So it's sometimes common to see an object that seems particularly relevant or important. So if you're working on a mystery, it might be something left at the scene that feels like it's a clue, but it actually isn't. It's actually leading the protagonist in an incorrect direction. It can also be an event that seems significant to the story or protagonist, but actually isn't. Maybe something that's been built up, but there's really no significance to it. And in a mystery or a thriller or a crime novel, it could also be a clue that's purposely planted by the antagonist or a secondary character that send investigators down the wrong path. So it could be something that is intended to actually be a red herring, right? So in our first 3 bullet points, we kind of talk about something that is there as a distraction, not necessarily intentionally, but it can also be something that you place into the novel by the antagonist or secondary character on purpose to distract from the main characters. So, an effective red herring, when you're thinking about it in the context of your story, is something that must serve a purpose and be an organic part of the story. Sometimes, particularly for mystery and thriller and crime writers, we want to be really clever and we want to like distract our readers. And we know that our readers love that thrill of the chase, they love that thrill of figuring things out. So, we throw a lot of red herrings in. But it's not necessary. The best red herrings are ones that have purpose and feel like they're part of the story. Again, they also have to be logical and have some kind of impact. A red herring that's there to just have no impact is not going to be engaging. So if that impact is, an effect on the protagonist or whatever it is, it just has to have some type of impact on what's happening in the story in order for it to be most effective. So before we get into our prompts, a couple more quick things. So here's some reasons why red herrings work. So first, they work as a literary device because they create tests. In a mystery, for example, a red herring can test your sleuth's abilities. They can provide that kind of that almost realism for the reader of the fact that your detective or your main character is not infallible. They can be led down the wrong path. And it creates that really kind of delicious tension for a mystery where you're like, I hope that, this character is strong enough to solve this crime. Red herrings in this instance can also distract your main character and provide plot tension, which in turn, of course, creates narrative tension for the reader. So an example of this is in The Final Problem by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. In this, Holmes and Watson are led astray by this note that says there is a woman in need of a doctor back at the hotel. It causes them, to go to her rescue, only to find out that that note was actually sent by their nemesis, Moriarty. And again, it's creating this kind of test of like, will these characters figure out what's happening before it's too late, right? Will they be sent on this quest that's going to lead them, kind of right into the villain's hands? Red herrings are also effective because they build tension. So I mentioned that we would talk about red herrings outside of the context of a mystery. So in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which isn't really a true mystery, Harry is believing that Sirius Black is this dangerous criminal. And Sirius kind of himself acts as the red herring that distracts attention from the real kind of bad guy at Hogwarts. So he's creating this narrative tension. He's also serving as almost this plot device where his potential motives and the danger that he causes are affecting a lot of Harry's experience at school that year, as well as a lot of the things that are happening to him. It kind of colors all of the experiences he has during that year. However, again, Sirius himself is the red herring because he's not the actual bad guy, right? So Harry learns later that he is, that he's been wrong and his suspicion has been misplaced. So in this instance, the person acts as a red herring, and it acts as a red herring to kind of distract Harry and create that tension that's really felt by both the readers, right, as they follow Harry's journey and learn about this horrible person, but also for Harry himself within the plot. Okay. So with that being said, we are going to jump into our prompts. Again, for those of you who are new to us, the write-in is a short little bit of teaching, and then we jump into prompts. So we're going to have 3 prompts today. One is 5 minutes, and the next 2 are 10. As the prompts start, I will read the prompt and give some explanation. Then I will start the timer. You can work till the timer is finished, and then when the timer is up, you can come back in and share your work with the chat if you would like, and I will cue you throughout all of it. Okay, so our first prompt is simply to brainstorm on a red herring. So for this one, for the purposes of this exercise, we're going to brainstorm on a red herring and assume that, our red herring in this instance is going to be a person. When you're actually writing, your red herring might be an object, event, or planted clue, etc. But for the purposes of this challenge, we're just going to assume the red herring is a person, just like Sirius Black was in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. So someone that's distracting. Again, if you're not writing a crime or a mystery novel, your red herring could be a love interest that looks really interesting, but isn't actually the real one, right? Like the boyfriend that was not actually supposed to be the final love interest. If you're writing a mystery, thriller, or crime novel, it could be the person that your detective is focusing on, right? Who they think is the suspect when it's not actually the suspect. So again, for our first one, we'll have 5 minutes. So we'll come back together at 1:16. I'm going to start the timer and I will see you in 5 minutes. Okay, coming back together. Some folks have already started dropping into the chat the ideas. Hi, Jack. I'm glad. No worries that you missed this. But go ahead and drop into the chat the prompts that you're working on. Hi, Daryl. Good to see you. So first red herring from Daryl is mother and daughter who have scraped together the funds to treat themselves. The main character's prejudice is that poor people will steal whereas the rich characters don't need to. So Daryl's been working on this story that we've been chatting about on a number of different calls, where his protagonist has this kind of weakness in relationship to class and kind of feeling almost like better than everyone. So it's interesting to see how this is playing out in the perspective of the red herring. And also I think getting in the way of the main character doing things that the main character, or like achieving their goals almost. It's this prejudice that's getting in the way of their thinking. Okay, let's see what else we've got. So Stefan, I'm sorry, I think it might be Stefan, is working on a romance, and the protagonist is receiving love letters, falls for lovely writing. Apparently the author is shy. The protagonist is looking for someone admiring her, identifies that person, but actually not the true author. So it's a very Cyrano type situation there, which I think is a perfect example of a red herring, right? You think, oh yeah, you said it's along the lines of Cyrano, exactly. I think there's the idea that there's this red herring for the protagonist who thinks that the admirer is someone, but it's not someone else. That's great. Such a great option. Okay, let's see what else we have. Anne has twins who believe their castle is haunted. They find a message on the mirror, and then the message is gone. Oh, and so it's kind of like, where is this clue left? Who left it? Why did they leave it? Very interesting. Okay, Glennis has a great scene here where they think that somebody is the murderer, and I think it's a she. Or Glennis, yes, Glennis has been kind of led in the wrong direction by seeing this clue, seeing something that they interpreted to be what it isn't. Great. Okay. Then we have somebody who has Lucy baiting Charlie Brown, messed with somebody to distract them from the fact that I had already found the money. So the character is basically almost planting red herrings and doing things like that to try to distract from something they've discovered. Great. These are all an amazing start. Okay, let's keep moving to our second prompt, since we don't have a lot of time today, since we have the ProWritingAid double feature. Okay, so now our second prompt, we have more time. We have 10 minutes. I want you to brainstorm how and why your red herring looks like a good suspect. So creating a character that has some benefit from the events of the story. They have means, they have opportunity, they have motive, whatever that is. The goal is to make sure your main character falls for that person for a particular reason. So the Stefan, who is writing about the Cyrano character, has some kind of identifiable traits about why it's this one person, but let's focus on that red herring. So for that one, focus on why the protagonist assumes it's that person, that assumed admirer. What is it about them that makes the protagonist think it's them? What is it about a particular red herring, whether it's a person or a thing, that makes it look so engaging? You can either continue to focus on the same red herring you were working on in the first prompt or a different one. I want you to think about creating a character that's believable for your protagonist. So somebody that has motive, that has means or opportunity, somebody that is essential to the events of the story. The key to writing a good red herring is to make sure that it's valuable to both you as the reader, or you as the writer, to your readers, and then to the protagonist too. A good red herring is valuable and has means, motive, opportunity, some reasoning for being a realistic suspect. So let's go ahead and start. We will have 10 minutes for this one. All right, time is up. So you can go ahead and drop in the chat your brainstorm around why this particular character is such a good suspect or such a distraction. You can probably hear my kitten meowing. She's a new kitten. She's got a lot of feelings. She just woke up. But anyway, okay, so you can share in the chat your ideas on why that character is so exciting. So David's red herring looks like a zombie is actually a trained actor who knows something about makeup and has made himself up to look like he's dead. So he basically has done all of these things to look like an actual zombie, which is pretty terrifying, I guess. I feel like having a person who's willing to like roll around in moldy clothes is just as scary as a real zombie. Yes, Jack, I've had the orange cat for a long time, but she is so she's been here all along, and then the tortoiseshell one is new. Okay, let's see. So Bonnie has two women competing for an acting position. The protagonist thinks she's going to get it because she has the education and work experience. The herring is chosen because the actor must be green-eyed and the protagonist doesn't want to dye her hair. And then the herring has more kind of believable experience. Oh, great. And so then the protagonist will replace her. I love how that kind of circles back around so that there's this idea that this person is going to kind of distract from the filming process, and then actually the other characters coming in right now. Going back to Stefan's not quite Cyrano romance, the red herring person has the looks, is already greatly admired. It seems like they have kind of a number of characteristics that make the protagonist think that it must be her, including, it seems like, often quoting classical poems and authors, which is, I mean, I don't know. I love classical stories. I studied Latin for years and years and years, but oh man, if someone had gone around quoting Latin in high school to me, I might have been, I don't know. I could see how that guy might be a red herring in terms of just feeling, I don't know. There's a lot of people, I guess, when you study classics who do that. So that character feels very familiar to me. Okay. So let's see what else we've got here. So Jack, you say that your main character's wife says the next door neighbor isn't right. She saw her naked flesh shimmer when she got out of the hot tub. And the main character thinks that the wife is just jealous and kind of passes it off as paranoia. I think you're kind of, so he's using this argument to justify his pursuit, despite the implication of breaking his home life. The main character is a wife that, it's not quite a red herring, Jack, but it is like a good distraction. There are a couple other ways to do something that's similarly distracting, and I feel like that's going to work for your story well anyway. So it's not like quite a red herring that's necessarily leading the main character down the incorrect path for a prolonged period of time. But other than that, I think it serves as a great distraction. So it's a good way to kind of include it, even if it's not a specific red herring. Okay, let's see a couple more. All right. Okay, so we have someone who said the older brother had told everyone he had hidden the money, but he walked around in tattered clothes and spent little. The recipient hadn't spoken, leaving the aspect of hidden money too enticing to pass up. Okay, yeah, so just kind of lots of different directions setting people in, which is great. And Sparks says Susanna appears unannounced during a snowstorm and sees the strange sight of three main characters carrying a body. Oh, interesting. So she uses her cell phone to report the activity, and her actions are mysterious, so you can't really tell where she is. So it's almost like she herself is, she's the red herring there. Great. Okay, time for our last prompt so that we can get off this call in time for those who are starting off next to us. So for our final prompt, we're going to work through some misdirection. So when you're thinking through misdirection in terms of your story, it's not always about misdirecting the reader by withholding information. Sometimes good misdirection is when you also add additional information that can help focus the reader's attention elsewhere. So I want you to brainstorm what extra information you could give your reader that would make the red herring more enticing. So perhaps if you're Stefan, you are including a scene where that classics quoting character is, showing up as kind of like the main exciting guy at a party, right? Or something like that. Something to kind of, or a scene where he's even interacting with the main character and flirting or something like that, that makes him exciting for whatever reason, right? Maybe the people who are dragging the bodies away, or maybe Susanna, who's reporting the bodies, is doing something that, makes her look like a more serious suspect. We have a scene of her going back to the car and, moving the shovel from the passenger seat into the back seat or something like that. But kind of adding these extra information or extra opportunities to interact with the red herring can help bring that focus, right? If you think back to the example of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Sirius becomes such a great red herring because he's everywhere in the story. Like, he is not just mentioned and then not seen again. He's on posters. When you think about the visual film, he's on posters everywhere. He's talked about by secondary characters, by background characters. It's just kind of a conversation all the time. And so that additional information can increase the focus on the reader's attention elsewhere. So we'll finish up with this one. I'm not sure if we're going to have time to read through everyone's submissions, just because we have to get off a little bit early for the next session, but I am going to save the chat and send it out with the replay tomorrow. So we'll have 10 minutes for this, and then make sure to drop your submissions into the chat. I'll read through what I can, and then we'll send out the chat with the call replay. So here we go, 10 minutes. All right, everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and save our chat since we have to have off in 1 minute for the next webinar to start. But thank you all so much for your participation today. I will send out the chat, as I mentioned, with the replay tomorrow. Unfortunately, the next session is not on this Zoom call. It's on a different one. So you'll have to hop off and get onto that link, but it will start very shortly. Thank you all so much again for your time. We will be doing another write-in at the end of October, which I can't believe. And if you have not already registered for Romance Writers Week, please come do that. It's just prowritingaid.com/romance week. And we are so thankful for having you. All right. Bye, everybody.